Why wasn't the IRA unit intercepted?
Well, my understanding is that the intelligence was not precise enough for people to know where these people were coming from, precisely who they were, and exactly when the attack would take place. And as it happened, the events unfolded with such rapidity it clearly wasn't possible to intercept them before they embarked upon their attack.
Why weren't they arrested?
Well, again, these are people who attacked with such ferocity. They demolished a police station. They opened fire with a whole variety of weapons. So clearly it wasn't possible to arrest them in those circumstances through the circumstances that they had brought about.
A few hundred yards from the police station there was a white car. Two brothers were inside. They were innocent civilians caught up in the IRA attack and SAS ambush.
How many times were you hit?
12 times to the back and a couple of times in the head.
In the head?
Uh-huh.
Whereabouts in the head?
At the left-hand side of it, on the back.
His brother Anthony was killed outright. The SAS fired 40 shots into the car.
Do you remember your brother saying anything?
Well, he gave a bit of a shout, Oliver, help me. Those are the last few words he said.
Well, this is an absolutely unspeakable tragedy. But I have no doubt that that was brought about by a gang of people determined to engage in murder, determined to carry out a gun attack and a bomb attack.
The SAS did the shooting, not the IRA. They killed Anthony Hughes.
This is an absolutely unspeakable tragedy, and there's no words that can dilute that. But I have no doubt where the responsibility and where the blame lies.
The SAS thought it was an IRA car. It wasn't. The brothers were just returning home from work.
When you look back on what happened, how do you think of that night?
Well, I think it was very unjust because they could have had a checkpoint and stopped us from going into that area. Told us there's danger about to take place.
But there was no checkpoint.
No.
I don't know how that would have been possible because the time scale wasn't known. I don't know how you could have brought the village life to a stop, not having detailed information at disposal.
But wasn't the real reason why there was no cordon around the village is that a cordon would have alerted the IRA to the fact that something was afoot, that their plans were known?
No, I'm certain that that isn't the case. I'm certain that had intelligence, had information been precise, then the planning could have been much more precise.
Did anybody ever say sorry?
No.
Ministry of Defence?
No.
SAS?
No.
British Army?
No.
RUC?
No.
No apology?
No. No apology.
Informants remain the lifeblood of intelligence, and the Army, as well as Special Branch, recruits and runs them. Their handlers belong to the Force Research Unit, the FRU. It's so secret, it doesn't officially exist. Its motto, Fishers of Men, says it all. As much as anything, its fishers need nerve.
You physically walk up to them
And say?
and say, I want a word with you. Or hello, use his name, and say something like, I'm from British intelligence, I want 20 seconds of your time. Don't panic, don't run away. And hope that he stands still. If he doesn't, physically hold him. It wouldn't be the first time I was left with a duffel coat in my hands from one of them just taking off.
Jeff joined the FRU in the mid-80s and handled both IRA and Loyalist agents. One of the agents he ran became notorious, a former British soldier from Belfast called Brian Nelson. By the early 70s, Nelson had left the army and joined the loyalist paramilitaries of the UDA. In 1983, he offered his services to the FRU, but, disillusioned, left after a year and went to live in Germany. In 1986, the FRU brought him back, against the specific advice of MI5. Jeff became Brian Nelson's handler.
We had set him up in that job. We had went to Germany, recruited him, promised him a house, had paid the deposit on a house, brought him and his family back into this dangerous job. He arrived with a left-hand drive vehicle, which was totally unsuitable. He was given the deposit for another car and set up in a taxi for him.
Were you involved in that rehabilitation here?
Yes.
Astonishingly, Nelson rapidly rose to become the UDA's intelligence chief. In theory, his job was to alert his handlers about the UDA's latest target. They, in turn, would inform the tasking and coordinating group, the TCG. The TCG operates from this office and consists of representatives from the agencies of British intelligence. They decide what action should be taken to thwart terrorist operations and thus save life. But it didn't always work out like that. Nelson didn't tell his handlers everything, and even when he did, their superiors didn't always act. Nelson gave the killers cards containing personal details of dozens of Republican suspects. He compiled them with the help of his handlers. Jeff now admits that his secret army unit actually aided and abetted in murder.
On occasions, would you give him the kind of information he was looking for?
No, but I would say to him, perhaps you don't have that wrong there.
But if you confirm the vehicle registration, and if the person who owns that car is targeted by the
Yes.
UDA, UFF,
Yes.
and killed, then you're complicit in the killing of that person, aren't you? Because you've confirmed the registration number. That's the real difficulty.
Well, it's a fine line you walk.
But the secret unit didn't stop Nelson crossing that line. He's believed to have been involved in over a dozen killings. In the end, he pleaded guilty to 5 charges of conspiracy to murder. 3 of those targeted survived. 1 was killed by mistake, and 1 was attacked in the middle of the night. His name was Gerard Slane. Nelson had supplied his photograph and file card to the killers. In the end, things got too hot for both Nelson and the FRU. He was exposed as a British agent. The judge sentenced him to 10 years for his part in planning murders. At his trial, the FRU's commanding officer paid tribute to Nelson's work. Jeff was of the same view.
He saved, in my estimation, dozens of lives. He was essential to what I'll use the word the war effort, and gave us an insight into the loyalist organisations that we never ever had in the past, and I believe don't now. He was a jewel in the crown.
But to Republicans, Brian Nelson was living proof of collusion, the instrument used by British intelligence to wipe out its enemies. The fact that Nelson usually tipped off his handlers cut no ice.
Brian Nelson went to jail because he was involved in conspiracies to murder.
Yes, at our behest.
He was encouraged to be involved in those conspiracies
Yes, he was.
by you and your colleagues,
Yes, he was.
by the FRU,
Yes,
by British intelligence,
yes,
serve their purpose,
yes,
and he went to jail.
yes. I am ashamed of it. He wasn't protected as was promised to him. Brian believed not that he was bulletproof, but that he had protection from us, and that what he was doing at our request, and therefore he had immunity. and he didn't.